Why did Danny and Michael leave their shoes perfectly lined up by the motel door as if they planned to return in 5 minutes? The shoes are still there when the sun comes up. 2 pairs of worn Ked sneakers lined up neat as soldiers outside room 127 of the Desert Rose Motel. Danny's on the left, size 10, the left toe scuffed from where he kicks rocks when he's thinking. Michael's on the right, size 8, with a small tear near the ankle where he caught them on barbed wire last summer. The laces are still tied, the way their mother taught them, loops and swirls, bunny ears and rabbit holes. Sheriff Tom Bradshaw crouches beside the shoes in the New Mexico morning light, his knees creaking like old leather. He's seen a lot in his 30 years wearing a badge in this stretch of nowhere between Albuquerque and Amarillo, but he's never seen anything like this. 2 boys, 14 and 12 years old, vanished into the desert night without taking their shoes, without taking anything at all. The mother is crying in the motel office, has been crying since she knocked on his door at 5:47 a.m., her voice breaking like glass as she tried to explain how you lose 2 children in a town with 1 main street and nowhere to hide. But that's the thing about Route 66. It's not about where you're going, it's about what follows you when you leave. To understand how Danny and Michael Morrison disappeared into thin air on October 13, 1962, you have to understand what brought them to the Desert Rose Motel in the first place. 3 days earlier, Chicago, Illinois. The 1959 Buick LeSabre sits in the driveway like a sleeping giant, robin's egg blue with chrome that catches the autumn sun. Helen Morrison loads the last suitcase into the trunk, her movements sharp and efficient, the way she's done everything since Richard left. Since the divorce papers were signed and the house was sold, and she realized that sometimes starting over means driving as far west as the car will take you. Danny leans against the car, all knobby knees and elbows, 14 years old and trying to look like he doesn't care that they're leaving the only home he's ever known. But his eyes keep drifting to the upstairs window of his bedroom, where a Cubs pennant still hangs forgotten on the wall. Michael sits on the front steps, picking at a loose thread on his jacket. At 12, he still believes in magic, still thinks that if he concentrates hard enough, he can make his parents get back together, make his father come home, make everything go back to the way it was before. "Boys," Helen calls, her voice carrying that forced brightness that's become her default tone. "Time to go. California, here we come." But California might as well be the moon. What matters is the road between here and there. What matters is Route 66, stretching out like a promise across America, carrying dreamers and drifters and broken families towards something better. "Can we stop at the Grand Canyon?" Michael asks as he climbs into the back seat, his voice small against the vinyl upholstery. "Of course, honey," Helen says, adjusting the rearview mirror to see his face. "We'll stop anywhere you want to stop." Danny slides into the passenger seat, claimed by virtue of being older, and fiddles with the radio dial until he finds Chuck Berry singing Route 66. The irony isn't lost on him. Get your kicks on Route 66, as if kicks were something you could just pick up off the highway like spare change. Helen starts the engine, and the LeSabre rumbles to life with a sound like distant thunder. In the rearview mirror, she watches their neighborhood grow smaller and smaller until it disappears entirely, swallowed by the city that never wanted them anyway. They have no way of knowing that in 3 days, only one of them will see another sunrise. The road stretches out endless and hypnotic, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through cornfields and prairie grass. Helen drives with the windows down, October air rushing through the car like freedom, like possibility. In the rearview mirror, she catches glimpses of her sons, Danny reading a paperback western, Michael pressing his face to the window to watch the telephone poles flash by like fence posts. In 1962, Route 66 is still the main street of America. Before the interstate highway system carved the country into efficient segments, before small towns were bypassed and left to die, there was the Mother Road, 2-lane blacktop running from Chicago to Santa Monica, lined with motor courts and diners and trading posts selling genuine Indian artifacts made in Japan. First day on the road, October 11th, 1962. They stop for lunch at a diner in Springfield, Illinois, where the waitress has beehive hair and calls everyone honey, and the jukebox plays Patsy Cline while truckers discuss the situation in Cuba over coffee and apple pie. Helen orders for all of them hamburgers and chocolate malts and French fries that come in a red plastic basket lined with wax paper. How far to California, Mom? Michael asks, stirring his malt with the long metal spoon. About 2,000 miles, she says, cutting his hamburger into manageable pieces out of habit, forgetting for a moment that he's 12, not 6. That's like driving to the moon, he says, with the exaggeration that only 12-year-olds can muster. Danny looks up from his food. The moon's 240,000 miles away. I read it in a book. Smart boy, says the waitress, refilling Helen's coffee cup. Where you folks headed? Los Angeles, Helen says. Fresh start. The waitress nods like she's heard it before. Route 66'll take you there. Just follow the road. Can't get lost if you stay on the mother road. Can't get lost. Helen files that away, a small comfort in the uncertainty of everything else. That night, they stay at the Trails End Motor Court in Joplin, Missouri. The rooms smell of pine sol and cigarettes, and the neon sign flickers pink and green against the darkness. Helen lies awake, listening to the hum of traffic on the highway, the occasional rumble of a semi-truck carrying someone else's dreams toward distant cities. October 12th, 1962, Day 2. Morning brings them through Oklahoma, past wheat fields that stretch to the horizon and oil derricks pumping like giant mechanical birds. They stop at a trading post that advertises genuine Navajo rugs and authentic turquoise jewelry, where Michael buys a plastic tomahawk with his allowance money, and Danny pretends he's too old for such things, but lingers by the postcard rack anyway. The woman behind the counter has skin like leather and eyes that have seen too much highway. "You boys be careful out there," she says as she rings up the tomahawk. "Desert's got a way of taking things that don't belong to it." Helen laughs it off. Desert superstition, nothing more, but something cold touches her spine as they walk back to the car. The road changes as they move west. The flat farmland of the Midwest gives way to rolling hills, then mesas and buttes that rise from the earth like ancient monuments. The sky gets bigger too, endless blue that makes you feel small and significant at the same time. They cross into New Mexico in the late afternoon, the sun hanging low and orange over mountains that look purple in the distance. Michael has been sleeping for the last 50 miles, his head against the window, the plastic tomahawk clutched in one hand. "Where are we going to stop tonight?" Danny asks, the first words he's spoken in an hour. Helen checks the travel guide spread across her lap. There's a place called Tucumcari. Says here it has 2,000 motel rooms. Should be able to find something, but they never make it to Tucumcari. October 13th, 1962, 6:45 p.m. The Desert Rose Motel appears out of the gathering darkness like something from a fever dream. Pink stucco walls that glow salmon in the sunset. A neon sign shaped like a blooming rose, half the letters already flickering against the coming night. 12 rooms arranged in an L shape around a courtyard with a dry swimming pool and 2 palm trees that look like they're barely hanging on to life. Helen pulls the LeSabre into the gravel parking lot and turns off the engine. In the sudden silence, she can hear the wind rattling the palm fronds and the distant whistle of a freight train somewhere out in the desert. "This is it," Danny says, looking at the motel with undisguised disdain. "Looks like a dump. It's just for one night," Helen says, though privately she agrees with him. The place has the hollow feeling of somewhere time forgot, somewhere dreams come to die. But it's late, and they're tired, and the next town is 60 miles of empty road. The motel office smells of coffee and cigarettes and something sweet that might be perfume or might be air freshener. Behind the desk sits a woman in her 60s, bottle blonde hair teased into a beehive that defies gravity. Her name tag says Dolores, and her smile is as pink and artificial as the motel's exterior. "Checking in, honey?" Dolores asks, stubbing out a cigarette in an ashtray shaped like Texas. "1 room, please. 2 beds. How many nights?" "Just 1. We're driving through to California." Dolores nods and pulls out a registration card. "Room 127. Nice and quiet, away from the road. That'll be $8. Helen pays cash and takes the key, an actual metal key attached to a pink plastic tag shaped like a rose. "Ice machines around back," Dolores says. "Coffee in the office from 6 to 10. Checkouts at 11. But checkout will come and go without the Morrisons." In a 1987 interview with Desert Magazine, Dolores Henley would say, "I've been running motels on Route 66 for 40 years, and I can tell you something about families on the road. The happy ones, they make noise. Kids laughing, parents arguing about directions. doors slamming, TV turned up too loud. But that family, they were quiet. Too quiet, like they were already ghosts. Room 127 is exactly what Helen expected. 2 double beds with chenille spreads, a black and white television set bolted to a metal stand, a bathroom with pink tile, and a mirror that's seen better decades. The air conditioning unit under the window rattles and wheezes but produces nothing but warm air that smells of dust and motor oil. Michael immediately claims the bed by the window and bounces on it to test the springs. Danny throws himself on the other bed and stares at the ceiling, where a water stain has formed a shape that looks vaguely like Texas or maybe a map to nowhere. "Who wants to walk down to the diner?" Helen asks, opening their suitcase and pulling out clean clothes for tomorrow. "I saw a sign that said best green chili in New Mexico, but it's not about the green chili. It's about getting out of this room that feels like a tomb, about moving, about not sitting still long enough to think about Richard and the house they left behind and the uncertainty that waits at the end of the road." The diner is attached to a gas station half a mile down the highway, a low building with windows that glow yellow against the desert night. Inside, it's all vinyl booths and Formica countertops and the smell of coffee that's been on the burner too long. A jukebox in the corner plays Patsy Cline's Crazy, and behind the counter a man with tattooed forearms flips burgers on a grill that's seen better decades. They slide into a corner booth and Helen orders green chili cheeseburgers for all of them, even though Michael wrinkles his nose at the idea of spicy food. The waitress, a girl who can't be more than 18 with dark hair and tired eyes, brings them Coca-Colas in bottles so cold they fog in the desert air. "You folks just passing through?" she asks, wiping down their table with a dish rag. "Heading to California," Helen says. "Los Angeles." The girl nods. "Lot of folks heading that way these days, looking for something better." "Are we gonna live near the ocean?" Michael asks Helen, his voice bright with the possibility of it. "I don't know, honey. We'll see when we get there, but they'll never get there. This is as far west as the Morrison family will ever travel." Danny pushes his French fries around on his plate, building little walls and moats. "What if Dad tries to find us? What if he comes back and we're not there?" The question hangs in the air like smoke from the grill. Helen reaches across the table and covers his hand with hers. "Your father knows where we're going," she says, though they both know it's not true. "And besides, this is our adventure now, just the 3 of us, but by morning it will just be one." October 14th, 1962, 6:23 a.m. Helen wakes to silence. Not the comfortable silence of sleeping children, but the hollow silence of empty space. She lies in bed for a moment, disoriented by unfamiliar ceiling stains and the smell of desert air through the gap under the door. Then she turns toward the boys' bed and sees rumpled sheets, tangled blankets, and no children. "Danny? Michael?" Her voice cracks the morning quiet. She sits up, her heart already beginning the familiar rhythm of maternal panic. Maybe they went to the ice machine. Maybe they're in the bathroom. Maybe there's a reasonable explanation for the empty bed and the door that stands slightly ajar. But the bathroom is empty. The ice machine around back stands silent and untouched. And when Helen pushes open the door to room 127, what she sees makes her legs go weak. The shoes, 2 pairs of sneakers lined up perfectly beside the door, laces tied, as if the boys had planned to step back into them in just a moment. Helen runs to the motel office, her bare feet slapping against the concrete, her nightgown billowing behind her like a flag of surrender. Dolores is already there, making coffee in a percolator that gurgles and hisses. "My boys," Helen gasps, her breath coming in short bursts. "They're gone. Their shoes are still there, but they're gone." Dolores sets down the coffee pot and looks at Helen with eyes that have seen too much highway drama to be easily surprised. "Gone how?" "I don't know. They were there when I went to sleep, and now they're not. And their shoes, the shoes that haunt Helen's dreams for the rest of her life, the shoes that will sit in an evidence box for decades, gathering dust and questions that have no answers." Sheriff Tom Bradshaw arrives 45 minutes later, his patrol car kicking up dust from the gravel parking lot. He's a tall man with grey hair and the kind of weathered face that comes from 30 years of dealing with the problems people create for themselves out here in the middle of nowhere. He examines the shoes first, crouching beside them like they might hold the secret to everything. Size 10 kids and size 8 kids, worn but not worn out, the kind of shoes boys live in during the summer when school's out and the world is one big playground. No sign of struggle, he tells Helen, who stands beside him wrapping her arms around herself despite the morning heat. No broken glass, no blood, nothing disturbed in the room. Then where are they? She asks, and her voice is so small it barely carries across the parking lot. Bradshaw stands up, his knees protesting. "Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions. When did you last see your boys?" Helen's mind feels like cotton, everything soft and unclear. "Last night, around 9:30, we came back from the diner and they watched some television and I told them to brush their teeth." The diner. The last normal moment, sitting in a vinyl booth while Patsy Cline sang about being crazy and the boys argued over who got the last French fry. Did they seem upset about anything? Any reason they might want to run away? Helen shakes her head. "No, nothing like that. I mean, Danny's been moody since the divorce, but not like this. And Michael, he's just a baby still, 12 years old. He's scared of the dark, but he walked out into the New Mexico night without his shoes, without his clothes, without anything that might keep him safe." Bradshaw calls for backup, and within an hour, the Desert Rose Motel is crawling with deputies and state police, and a search dog that sniffs around the empty swimming pool and whines like it's found something troubling. They search every room, every closet, every possible hiding place in a motel that has no secrets because it's too small to keep any. The dog leads them into the desert behind the motel, following a scent trail that disappears after 50 yards, as if the boys simply evaporated into the thin air of high desert morning. Navajo tracker Joe Begay, hired by the sheriff's department, would later tell reporters the boys' trail goes into the desert and just stops. Not like they climbed into a car or were taken by force, like they walked until they became part of the wind. "I've tracked animals and men for 40 years, and I've never seen anything like it." Day 2 of the search, October 15th, 1962. The search expands to cover a 10-mile radius. Volunteers from 3 counties form lines and walk slowly through the scrub brush and arroyos, calling Danny's and Michael's names until their voices echo off the mesa walls. Helicopters circle overhead, their rotors chopping the desert air into pieces. Helen sits in the motel office, drinking coffee that Dolores keeps refilling and watching the searchers through the window. She's called Richard, her ex-husband, the boy's father, 3 times, but his new girlfriend keeps answering and saying he's not available. Finally, on the 4th call, his voice comes through the static of long-distance wires. "They're probably just hiding somewhere," he says, and Helen can hear the dismissal in his tone, the way he's already decided this is somehow her fault. You know how boys are, but she does know how boys are. Her boys, Danny, who reads Western novels and pretends to be tough, but still sleeps with a nightlight. Michael, who collects bottle caps and believes in magic, and hasn't spent a night away from home in his entire life. Richard, they wouldn't just... She stops, swallows hard. They wouldn't leave their shoes. "I'm sure they'll turn up," he says, and the line goes dead, leaving Helen alone with the dial tone and the sound of her own breathing. Day 3, October 16th, 1962. The story makes the newspapers. 2 boys vanish from Route 66 motel. The Associated Press picks it up, and suddenly reporters are driving out from Albuquerque and Santa Fe, their cameras clicking at the shoes still sitting outside room 127, now protected by crime scene tape that flutters in the desert wind. Helen gives interviews, her voice steady but her hands shaking as she describes her boys to strangers with notebooks and recording equipment. Danny's cowlick that never stays down no matter how much she combs it. Michael's gap-toothed grin and the way he hums when he's happy. They're good boys, she tells the reporters. They wouldn't run away. Something happened to them. But what? How do 2 children disappear from a motel room without taking their shoes, without waking their mother, without leaving so much as a fingerprint on the door handle? The FBI sends agents from Albuquerque, serious men in dark suits who examine the room with magnifying glasses and take photographs of everything, even the water stain on the ceiling that looks like Texas or maybe a map to nowhere. They interview Dolores, who chain smokes through the entire conversation and insists she didn't see or hear anything unusual. Quiet family, she says, real quiet, almost like they were afraid to make noise. They interview the cook from the diner, the waitress, the gas station attendant who sold Helen a candy bar for Michael after dinner. Everyone remembers the family, but no one saw anything that might explain what happened between 9:30 p.m. on October 13th and 6:23 a.m. on October 14th. 1 week later, October 21st, 1962, the search is officially called off. The volunteers go home to their own families. The reporters pack up their cameras and move on to other stories. The FBI agents file their reports and mark the case inactive pending new information. Helen stands in room 127, which the motel manager wants to clean and rent again, and tries to understand how the world can just continue. How people can eat breakfast and drive to work and argue about television programs when Danny and Michael are still out there somewhere, still missing, still needing their shoes. The boys' belongings fit in one small suitcase. Danny's paperback westerns and his baseball cards, and the white t-shirt he wore to bed. Michael's plastic tomahawk and his collection of bottle caps, and the stuffed dog he slept with since he was 3, but was too embarrassed to carry in front of his older brother. The shoes, though. The shoes stay in the evidence room at the sheriff's office, tagged and catalogued and waiting for answers that never come. Mrs. Morrison, Sheriff Bradshaw stands in the doorway, his hat in his hands. "I need to ask, what are your plans now?" Helen looks around the room that has become the center of her universe, this pink-walled tomb where her children last slept. "I don't know," she says, and realizes it's the truest thing she's said in weeks. You can't stay here forever. But where else can she go? Back to Chicago, to the empty house and the life she was running away from. Forward to California, to dreams that belong to a woman whose children are sleeping safely in the next bed. "I'll wait a little longer," she says, "in case they come back." Bradshaw nods, though they both know the boys aren't coming back. Not to room 127, not to the Desert Rose Motel, not to the mother who sits by the window every night watching the highway for headlights that never slow down. In a 1975 interview with True Detective magazine, Helen Morrison would say, "I kept their shoes in my car for 3 years after I left New Mexico. In a box in the trunk wrapped in tissue paper, I told myself that when I found them, when, not if, they'd need their shoes. It took me that long to accept that I wasn't going to find them, that they'd found something else out there in the desert, something that didn't require shoes at all." 6 months later, April 1963. Helen finally leaves the Desert Rose Motel on a morning when the wind is blowing hard from the west, carrying the smell of rain and distant mountains. She loads the La Sabra with what's left of her life, the suitcase of clothes, some toiletries, a photograph of the boys taken at Christmas 2 years ago when they were still a family. Dolores comes out to say goodbye, her pink uniform bright against the faded stucco walls. "I'll call if anything turns up," she promises, though they both know nothing will turn up. The desert has swallowed Danny and Michael Morrison as completely as if they never existed at all. "Keep the room," Helen says, and for a moment Dolores looks confused. "Keep it, room 127. Don't rent it to anyone else, please." Dolores nods, understanding something that doesn't need to be explained. Some rooms are haunted not by ghosts but by absence, by the echo of voices that will never speak again. Helen drives west on Route 66, toward California and a life she'll have to build from nothing. In the rearview mirror, the Desert Rose Motel grows smaller and smaller until it disappears entirely, swallowed by the desert and the distance. But she never makes it to Los Angeles. She stops in Barstow, California, gets a job as a waitress in a diner that serves truckers and dreamers and other people running away from something. She rents a small apartment above a hardware store and waits. Waits for what? For the phone call that never comes, for the knock on the door that never sounds, for the day when she'll understand how you lose 2 children on a highway that's supposed to take you somewhere better. 25 years later, October 13th, 1987, Helen Morrison drives the La Sabra. Still running, still robin's egg blue, but faded now like an old photograph, back to the Desert Rose Motel. She's grey-haired now, 63 years old, wearing a waitress uniform that smells of coffee and fried food and the accumulated dreams of people passing through. The motel looks smaller than she remembers, shabbier, like something from a postcard that's been left too long in the sun. Half the neon letters in the rose-shaped sign have burned out, and the pink stucco walls are cracked and peeling. But it's still here, still standing guard over a stretch of Route 66 that the new interstate has bypassed and forgotten. Dolores is still behind the desk, 25 years older but still blonde, still smoking cigarettes that leave ash scattered across the registration cards. She looks up when Helen walks into the office, and her eyes widen with recognition. "Well, I'll be damned," she says. "Helen Morrison, I wondered if you'd ever come back." "I come back every year," Helen says. "Same day, October 13th. 25 years, Dolores says, stubbing out her cigarette. "Has it really been that long?" Helen nods. "I want to see the room. Room 127 looks exactly the same. The same chenille bedspreads, the same black and white television, the same water stain on the ceiling that looks like Texas or maybe a map to nowhere. But there's something else now, a feeling in the air, a presence that wasn't there before." Helen sits on the bed where she slept that last night, and for the first time in 25 years, she lets herself really remember, not just the morning of discovery, not just the empty shoes and the frantic searching, but the night before, the last normal night, when her boys were still here, still breathing, still believing in tomorrow. Michael had been scared of the strange room, the unfamiliar sounds of desert night. He'd climbed into her bed sometime after midnight, his small body warm against her side. "Mama," he'd whispered, "I had a bad dream." "What about, baby?" "We were driving and we never got anywhere, just kept driving forever." She'd smoothed his hair and kissed his forehead and told him dreams were just dreams, that in the morning they'd be back on the road, heading toward California and their new life. But what if Michael's dream wasn't a dream at all? What if it was a vision, a glimpse of something that was about to happen? Helen reaches into her purse and pulls out a piece of paper, yellowed with age and folded so many times the creases have become permanent scars. It's a letter, written in a child's careful handwriting, postmarked October 14th, 1962, the day after the boys disappeared. "Dear Mum, Danny and me are okay. We found the road that goes forever, the one Michael dreamed about. It's not scary like he thought. It's beautiful. There are other kids here, kids who got lost on the mother road and decided to stay lost. We don't need shoes here because the road is soft like clouds. Don't be sad, we're not gone, just traveling. Someday when you're done with your road, you can find ours. Look for the place where the highway ends and the sky begins. Love, Danny and Michael. P.S. We left our shoes so you'd know we meant to come back, but this is better than coming back. This is going forward forever." The letter arrived at her apartment in Barstow 3 days after she moved there, forwarded from the Desert Rose Motel. The handwriting was Danny's, but the words were something else entirely, something that understood mysteries older than highways and deeper than desert sand. Helen never showed the letter to the police or the FBI. Some evidence is too sacred for official files, too personal for public consumption. Instead, she's carried it with her for 25 years, reading it every October 13th, trying to understand how children who were scared of the dark could find the courage to walk into forever. Now, sitting in room 127 with the desert wind rattling the windows and the ghost presence of her boys in the air, she finally understands. Route 66 isn't just a highway, it's a river of dreams flowing across America, carrying people toward their destinies whether they know it or not. Some people reach their destinations, California beaches, new jobs, fresh starts. Others find something different along the way, something that calls to the part of them that was never meant to arrive anywhere, only to keep traveling. Danny and Michael didn't disappear. They were chosen, selected by the Mother Road itself, for a journey that doesn't end in Santa Monica or anywhere else that appears on maps. Helen folds the letter carefully and puts it back in her purse. Outside, the sun is setting over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that exist nowhere else in the world. She can almost see them now, two boys walking hand in hand down an endless highway that shimmers in the heat, their bare feet comfortable on asphalt that feels like clouds. The shoes were never evidence of abandonment. They were a gift, a promise, a way of saying goodbye without having to say the word. Helen walks to the door of room 127 and kneels beside the spot where the shoes once sat. The concrete is stained now, worn smooth by 25 years of weather and time, but she can still see their outline if she concentrates hard enough. She reaches into her purse and pulls out 2 items, a pair of well-worn Keds sneakers, size 10, scuffed on the left toe where someone kicks rocks when he's thinking, and beside them, size 8 Keds with a small tear near the ankle. The shoes she's kept in her car for 3 years, then in her closet for 22 more, waiting for the day when she'd be ready to let them go. Helen places them carefully on the concrete, lining them up neat as soldiers, laces tied in perfect bunny ears and rabbit holes. Then she stands and walks to her car without looking back, because some goodbyes are too powerful to witness twice. Behind her, the Desert Rose Motel settles into another night of waiting. The neon sign flickers pink and green against the darkness, a beacon for travelers who are lost and don't know it yet, or found and don't know that either. And if you drive Route 66 late at night, especially on October 13th when the veil between worlds grows thin, you might see them, two boys walking hand in hand down the center line, their bare feet silent on the asphalt, following a highway that leads not to California but to forever. They're not ghosts. They're pioneers, explorers of a frontier that exists in the spaces between destinations, in the rhythm of tires on pavement and the whisper of wind through open windows. The mother road keeps her children, and her children keep the road alive. This is what happens when you lose yourself on Route 66. You discover that some journeys aren't about reaching your destination. They're about becoming the destination for someone else, a story that gets told in diners and truck stops, a legend that lives in the space between what happened and what people wish had happened. Danny and Michael Morrison are out there still, walking the forever highway, their shoes left behind like breadcrumbs for a mother who finally understood that love doesn't always lead you home. Sometimes it leads you somewhere better.